offering freely, receiving openly, and trusting in the bounty of life. If these are themes or experiences in your life, this episode is especially for you. Please sit a while and enjoy the journey. Hello and welcome to Inner Bloom Meditations, a podcast for all the things that help us reflect, understand, love, and grow. An audio space to relax and ground, a place to bloom into your highest self. I'm your host, Richard DeLuna, and of all the things that have helped me in my own growth and grounding, none rank higher than the book The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, an artist, poet, and philosopher. This book has done so much to show me to myself and to show me new ways to understand the world. So, without further ado, let's dive into the beauty and wisdom of Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. Then said a rich man, "Speak to us of giving." And he answered, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. For what are your possessions but things you keep and guard for fear you may need them tomorrow? And tomorrow, what shall tomorrow bring to the overprudent dog bearing bones in the trackless sand as he follows the pilgrims to the holy city? And what is fear of need but need itself? Is not dread of thirst when your well is full the thirst that is unquenchable? There are those who give little of the much which they have, and they give it for recognition, and their hidden desire makes their gifts unwholesome. And there are those who have little and give it all. These are the believers in life and the bounty of life, and their coffer is never empty. There are those who give with joy, and that joy is their reward. And there are those who give with pain, and that pain is their baptism. And there are those who give and know not pain in giving, nor do they seek joy, nor give with mindfulness of virtue. They give as in yonder valley the myrtle breathes its fragrance into space. Through the hands of such as these, God speaks, and from behind their eyes he smiles upon the earth. It is well to give when asked, but it is better to give unasked through understanding, and to the open-handed, the search for one who shall receive is joy greater than giving. And is there aught you would withhold? All you have shall someday be given. Therefore, give now, that the season of giving may be yours and not your inheritors. You often say, "I would give, but only to the deserving." The trees in your orchard say not so, nor the flocks in your pasture. They give that they may live, for to withhold is to perish. Surely he who is worthy to receive his days and his nights is worthy of all else from you. And he who has deserved to drink from the ocean of life deserves to fill his cup from your little stream. And what desert greater shall there be than that which lies in the courage and the confidence, nay, the charity of receiving? And who are you that men should rend their bosom and unveil their pride, that you may see their worth naked and their pride unabashed. See first that you yourself deserve to be a giver and an instrument of giving. For in truth, it is life that gives unto life, while you, who deem yourself a giver, are but a witness. And you receivers, and you are all receivers, assume no weight of gratitude, lest you lay a yoke upon yourself and upon him who gives. Rather, rise together with the giver on his gifts as on wings. For to be over mindful of your debt is to doubt his generosity, who has the free-hearted earth for mother and God for father. Yes, yes. We are all receivers, and we all rise together with the giver as on wings. Now that we've shared in this beauty and wisdom of this poetry, I invite you to take a little time gathering your thoughts on the poem, reflecting, or even journaling what might have come up for you. I'll give you a little extra time to do so if you wish. Feel free to pause if you want or need, and then we'll begin to explore these words and their beauty in depth together. We have now taken another dive into the beauty and strength of the prophet's poems, which have offered us more to think and consider, and more importantly, more to feel and connect with. We're shown new paths and new perspectives that shine new light upon each facet of the gem that is our life. Elated as I am to explore these new facets and the new light cast upon them with you, I feel I should first confirm, or at least say, that I am by no means a licensed therapist or counselor. I am, though, another human, living the human experience and sharing something that's made my life so much more colorful, vibrant, and loving. So, in all you hear and share in, here with me and with this book, and out in the world, accept what resonates, consider what doesn't, and continue to live your life in truth, beauty, and goodness. So, let us continue this journey together into the wellspring of life that is poetry written with love. This poem, as with all the poems in this book, start with a person asking of a topic, and the person who asks each topic is somewhat important. It kind of centers the experience and gives insight to who is going to have this idea, this theme within them more strongly as a curiosity, right? As an uncertainty, maybe as a goal, maybe as a hesitation. And so this poem on giving is asked by a rich man, no other details. And so it makes sense that a rich man would ask this question, someone who has received much and maybe, potentially, has not given much or has much to give. The prophet's response begins with, I think, yeah, a very kind of Khalil Gibran prophetesque opening to the poem. You give but little when you give of your possessions. like these previous poems that we've read. Love telling us to accept the not only the pleasures of love, but its pains. Marriage asking us to bring spaciousness into our togetherness. Children beginning with the phrase, "Your children are not your children." And now giving. All of these things asking us to take a new perspective than what might be the perspective that we take for granted or automatically find ourselves viewing it from. And so, hearing of the rich man, we may hear again this idea of a person with many possessions. And he says, you give but little when you give of your possessions. That reorientation immediately. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. Continuing that reorientation that we truly give when we give of ourselves. And I feel as though that brings into mind or centers that we all have just as much to give as the next person, as each other. Our attention, our love, our presence, and our understanding. And so just kind of centering, I think I think very literally centering the aspect of giving to something within us, removing it to a degree from those possessions. Or I guess that comes in a little bit when he says, there are those who have little and give it all. These are the believers in life and the bounty of life. So kind of speaking of this connection to the exchange of being given and in turn giving instantly or fully or wholly. But before we get there, he kind of dissects his own poetry, saying, it is when you give of yourself that you truly give. For what are your possessions but things that you keep and guard for fear you may need them tomorrow? And he breaks that down. And tomorrow, what shall tomorrow bring to the dog burying bones? To the overprudent dog burying bones in the sand. And borrowing from that previous sentence again, and what is fear of need but need itself? So just kind of breaking down his own understanding and expanding it a little bit for us. And something in there that I really like actually is his use of the word over prudent, which I think occurs or something similar happens later in the poem. In the last line, he says over mindful, but here he says over prudent. And so this is not vilifying prudence or to be prudent. In fact, let's look up what this word means exactly, right? Its definition. Looks like it has a few definitions actually. Reading from Merriam-Webster, it looks like we have the ability to govern and discipline oneself by the use of reason, sagacity or shrewdness in the management of affairs, skill and good judgment in the use of resources, or also caution or circumspection as to danger or risk. And I feel like a few words in there might require looking up their definition too. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with this word, sagacity or sagacity. I think it's going to be sagacity. Let's look that one up. We were right, sagacity, foresight, discernment, or keen perception, the ability to make good judgments. So, yeah, right here, he's not saying this comparison of the dog bearing bones is not to say that prudence is bad. In fact, most of this sounds, I think, pretty good. I think these sound like great qualities to have or to engage with, right? But maybe there is an overuse of this. I think that in the first definition here, it says the use of reason. And I could be misremembering, but I believe later in the prophet, there's a poem that talks about reason alongside passion. Um, yeah. So there's actually a poem called On Reason and Passion. And two things that Khalil, as an author, does is really seek to invert understandings to help us see things from new perspectives. And a major focus or a major facet of that is doing that through seeing the wholeness of something in two things that may seem disparate. So later there is a poem called On Joy and Sorrow, in which he navigates those in bringing them together and seeing them as parts of a whole. There's also a poem called On Reason and Passion that we just mentioned, and one that's on good and evil. And again, just seeking to understand things that feel like opposites and understand them as two parts of that whole. I think one that I remember being described that oriented that pretty well for me was this explanation of hot and cold, that we view them as opposites, but they're really just two variants of the same thing. That temperature is just a measurement of heat, essentially. So it's just a spectrum of heat, and we're looking at different points of it, and even things that we understand as different points of it are based on perspective. So we, I assume everybody listening to this podcast is a human. We as humans live at about 98 degrees and would view something at 200 degrees as hot and something at 0 degrees as cold. But if we were to speak of the temperature of the sun or a star, all of that is freezing, right? And if we were to speak to the temperature of dead space, this is really hot, even at 0 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit. So he's not vilifying prudence. He's not even vilifying over prudence, but bringing a understanding or maybe highlighting the possibility that there can be such a thing as overprudence, that overuse of reason, which later we'll explore in that poem on reason and passion, where he speaks of the beauty of both of them and the necessity of these two things to work in tandem. And so I would like to, I wish I had a cool segue here to bring us into that next line, the final line of this, where he says, is not dread of thirst when your well is full, the thirst which is unquenchable. And there is probably a lot to chew on in that line alone. I think the phrase of a cup being half full, half empty, right, is one that many of us know. When he says, dread of thirst when your well is full, that resonates with me as a cup being full as well, right? Or we're going to tie those two together. Earlier this week, even, I so synchronistically, this week was so beautiful for the synchronicities. Absolutely. And all these weeks are claiming that, for me, for you, for all of us. but I so synchronistically met a tarot card reader named Deidre, I believe, who really honed in on this idea in our conversation, right? Just saying how often she comes back to this concept and these questions. Hey, like saying, hey, do you remember when you so badly wanted the things that you have right now? And how you imagined yourself so happy when you would just finally get them, when you would have them? And wouldn't it be so kind or so good to let yourself feel that way right now, that you have those things and that you thought of yourself feeling that way? And, thinking of how far we've gotten to be here, wherever we are, we have put in work to fill that well, to fill our resources in one way or another. I think, yeah, something I want to lean into in this podcast is a certain practicality and a certain ability to engage with these things in the what we'll maybe call spiritual space, or at least the contemplative space, right? And speaking of them in real life ways. So in here in particular, we have done so many things to, fill up our wells across our lives. When we moved to new places or started new classes, and we're like, man, it'd be cool to have a new friend, or I wish I had, a new friend, a new person. And then guess what? You met somebody, and you have a friend and you have a person. I assume more than one at this point in your life. You have likely, wanted to, and I have likely wanted to have a job maybe when I was between them, and thought, oh, once I have a job or this job, I'll feel this way. And so we have done these different things that fill our well. And it can be hard to forget that that well is at least somewhat full. There is not nothing in there. We have read books and we have learned things. We have acquired skills. We have been exposed to new things. We've talked with people we've wanted to talk to. Maybe not all of them, certainly, but many of them. And so there are things in that well to be pulled from. And then we forget. I know I forget, right? In moments of stress or distress, which are valid, it can be easy to forget that we have that full well, that we have done things to fill that well. And, when we're maybe a step further, that there are things that we don't even have to do, and that well can just be full if we reorient our way of understanding. But that might be a little removed from our immediately available practical thought processes. And I always think it's so important to meet ourselves where we're at, that I meet myself where I'm at. And so something that I think of is I don't know if everybody here has seen Euphoria, for me to reference the scene where she needs to go to the restroom and just doesn't. But it's one I can relate to in feeling stressed or distressed and knowing I want some water and kind of not going to get some water, or like a kid who might just not know how yet, right? Who hasn't learned to walk to the sink and turn it on, or walk to get a bottle of water, or have the strength to open it. There are ways in which we may not know to tap into our wells. And so something here, right, to hone in on is maybe just the consideration of what ways can we tap into those things that we do have access to. If we're using that comparison of feeling like the child or being like the child, not all skills are given to us across our lives, not yet, anyways. We can seek them out, though. You were given a hand of cards, and you can seek to add new cards to your hand. And one of those, for you, for me, for us, is the ability to utilize the resources of our community to ask for help. And that can be friends and family. And like I'm in school right now, right? So teachers, and making sure to step into those and use those resources. Being stressed at school, I used to never reach out and ask. I used to never utilize the tutor as a resource. And one day my academic coach, which is another resource, was like, yeah, go holler at them. And this this question I've been struggling with for like days. We figured out in like a minute. It was so amazing. It was so great. And even my academic coach really highlighted that for me. That, hey, you learned this important thing, that you have this as a resource and you can lean on that. And as somebody who I want to circle to this and kind of say, especially while this podcast is so young, I don't know how many people are really hearing this, but I'm kind of making this content and these episodes from the perspective of somebody who has definitely struggled with overcoming and meeting certain challenges. To those of you who this means something astrologically, I have some really strong water placements that lead to a lot of sensitivity that have been a challenge to meet throughout my life. And the benefit of all challenges are that they have the opportunity to teach us things. Like this Instagram post that I saw recently, or social media post, discussed or had the phrase, like essentially saying not to ask, why is this happening to me? And instead to ask, what does this have to teach me? Moving that that locus of control internally. And as a sensitive person, sometimes that's easier said than done. So I'm creating this, hopefully that they're thinking that there's other people in the world who are having similar experiences, and this can be of benefit to you. So if it is, amazing. I'm really happy. I made this for you. You specifically, whoever is hearing this right now, this is for you. And thank you for being here. So, this utilizing of resources that our well is full and we might not know it, right? It can be hard to ask for help. It can feel difficult. We can meet with challenge in that, be it pride or guilt or shame or uncertainty. But it gets easier to ask for help as things go by. And there's so many important things in that that can help us, right? That maybe we won't explore as much right now. But one of them, I think, very importantly, is having boundaries with self, to not let our concept of self and value fluctuate when we ask for things, and maybe a little bit harder when we ask for things and we don't receive them. That we not view ourselves as lesser, because we are certainly not. You are certainly not. And I hope you know that. Yeah, I really do. Let me remind you, your value does not fluctuate. But in reaching for these resources and knowing that we have them, I think something else that comes up a lot, or something that comes to mind for me, is this really cool thing that I've been thinking about lately. And I shared in one of my groups recently, which is that I'm in school for game design, and in being in school for game design, we focus on this idea of, or we learn this idea of flow. And I think many of you have heard this. It's becoming a much more popular phrase, especially in like, athletic spaces and spiritual spaces, if you will, that it's this flow state, this thing, this area, this medium ground, this experience where it's a good amount of challenge and enjoyment and focus, and also to a degree relaxation. All of these things coming together into one experience. And for that to happen, a lot of the time it has to be enough of a challenge to engage. That's not always the case with flow state, but with this idea of flow, as Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, I believe. If I butchered that, I apologize. But I believe he's the author of a book called Flow, another one maybe called Creativity or Fun, a very impactful author in this arena. But you have to find that middle ground of elevating like challenge and enjoyment and release and different things that essentially end up creating, you can almost see an image in your mind, if you will, like a line graph of that looks maybe like stock market kind of rising at a steady rate, right? At like a 45-degree angle. And maybe I should just start making visual elements for this podcast. But you can imagine that kind of rising and falling and rising and falling, but kind of staying within this sweet spot as it rises. But you don't want to, in game design, you don't want to present players with too difficult of a challenge. Most players, you don't want to present them with too much of a challenge. Neither do you want to make things too easy, because if it's too challenging, then all they experience is frustration. If it's not challenging enough, then they will just be bored. So you have to find that sweet spot. But to find that sweet spot, a gamer, right, a player needs to have the right tools and have the right challenges in front of them. So you give somebody a boss fight, right? By the time they encounter that boss fight, they should have a certain amount of like weaponry or whatever it is, ammo or something with them. The one I like to think about a lot is health packs or health in general. So if we are playing a game and rushing through it, it could be very easy to miss the health packs that were like around the door before we entered it or something like that. And then when we go to fight that boss fight, it's way too hard. We like die instantly. So this kind of brings in this thing that we loosely talked about, I think, in episode 0, when I first talked about discovering The Prophet as a book itself. It's a funny little story, but basically I was blind to something that was trying to show itself to me. This book is what I was blind to, as it was actively trying to bring itself into my life. But the idea is that life is seeking to give us beautiful things, and I want to affirm that for you. Life is seeking to give you beauty and bounty and abundance. And me too, 100%. Like that's our destiny. That's our blessing. That's our birthright. And sometimes we forget it. Sometimes we overlook it. My friend Summer shared something beautiful with me recently that said something along the lines of, I was waiting for the universe to speak to me with words, and because I was so intent on listening, I forgot to look around me, and the universe, it turns out, was speaking to me through sight with flowers and stars and beauty. And so, by focusing attention too much in one area, thinking that the blessing looks like this or must look like that, it's very easy to bypass even big blessings, right? That could be calling out to us in certain ways, those health packs, right? We're walking right past those health packs. And life does that for us really often. I think more often than we might realize, certainly more often than I was realizing until I got to a space where until I got to this space where I'm moving into making those requests and asking those things of others, of the universe, right? Of love, of life, and keeping an open mind and heart. Feeling super blessed with all the synchronicities this week. Met a tarot card reader and another spiritual person very similar to me who is also a podcaster, and really excited to gain wisdom from them, and also an astrologer who all knew more than me in these respective fields. And I only got to meet them because I listened to this person and I overcame the social anxiety to speak to that person and, listen to advice here and got off at this stop there, right? Like all these different little things. And so these resources are orbiting us always. And the well is full in its own ways, maybe not in the ways that we're seeing. Again, as Khalil steps in to ask us to view things in different ways, we can do that and we can reorient our understanding of what it is to be blessed and what it is to have our well full. And so we can learn to ask the things of the people around us and of the things around us to help fill that well. And then also we can realize those ways in which it is full and abundant and we're just not realizing. We can walk around the corner and there's the flower that's bringing that beauty and light into our life. That is the message that the universe was seeking to give to us. And we cannot rush. We could, instead of rushing into that boss fight, could think of the health packs that are like around us, or maybe even, and I don't want to overuse the video game analogies, but as I said, I am in game design. We might forget actually that we're carrying health packs with us, which is to say, we might forget our self-soothing habits, our self-soothing skills, and also might not know them yet, but we might forget them in a time of stress and duress, right? And that's where something like boundaries can come into play. And we can step up and say something, I don't know. Again, need to affirm I'm not a therapist or a counselor. Just sharing things that have been of benefit to me, and I'm hopeful too that they will be helpful to you. But we can take space from a difficult situation. We can speak up and say we need space, and then take advantage of that space should we be blessed to be able to do that. And I think, again, we very often are. But we can take advantage of that space and fill it with nourishing activities. We know we're going to have this difficult conversation. For instance, I think that's a good example, one that a lot of us know and have to engage with, difficult conversations. We can use those health packs that we are carrying on us by planning to, if possible, have good sleep before that thing, before that conversation or that test. We can eat a good meal. We can seek to have maybe one of our preferred or favorite meals, a comfort meal, if you will. Maybe that's soup for you. Maybe that's rice and beans. Maybe that's, I don't know, whatever it might be, that thing that has the familiarity to you. hot tea always does it for me. And I know that I can seek that thing out maybe during the conversation, and right before it, I make one so I can drink it during the conversation. Um, for really tough conversations, I actually will literally ask 1 to 3 or 4 friends if they have free time to speak with me before or after that difficult conversation, so I can have that space that I know I'll be able to decompress and connect with somebody that I trust and love. And that's me putting all those health packs into place, right? The well is full, but we maybe need to learn how to pull from it. Like I mentioned earlier, that kid who might not know how to get water for themselves yet, but can learn. We are learners and growers, a thing to remind ourselves of, not to beat ourselves up over not knowing this skill or this thing right now, but reminding ourselves that we can learn that thing and we can grow from this thing. And that's who and what we are. And that feels good. And that is good. Um, man, this has been a lot of exploration. But I'm brand new to this experience of podcasting, and I don't yet know what y'all like. Honestly, I'm kind of figuring out what I like. So thanks for if you're still here. Thanks for being here. Feel free to share and let me know what you thought and what you like. Maybe between this episode and previous episodes. Um, I actually meant to go through quite a bit more of this poem, if not all of it, but we've been hanging out for a little bit, so let's maybe start winding down a little bit, you know. Also, this episode I made a lot more conversational, I think, than previous ones. If you like that, let me know. It's a little bit longer as well. Yeah, there's a few changes here. But if you're still here with us, feel free to share down below, if that's an option on whatever you're listening to. But yeah, let me know. This is for the unfolding, right? And the blooming. For it to be a safe space and a gentle space, and for it to be a space where we find and engage with things that are helpful, right? That are beneficial, that are healing, that are empowering. So hopefully this is that for you. Thank you so much for being here, and if you're still here, you really thank you. Um, what would be some takeaways from this episode? There are other ways to see things that um, we are learning and growing. That our well is always full, and we always have these resources to pull from, that we might not be recognizing at this time. Not to say every resource is always available, but also not to not say that, right? Not to remove that blessing from our life, but that there are things that we might forget to pull from and might not yet know how to pull from. Like maybe you don't know that herbal teas are great and calming because you historically have not drunk teas. Give it a try. It's amazing. I super recommend it. Big tea fan. Maybe we don't realize that that amazing person who could make a huge impact on your life is 1 or 2 conversations away. You know, if you can step into the discomfort of speaking with somebody that you want to speak with, or whatever it might be, maybe just not utilizing resources that you historically haven't and could move into. I know a huge one is movement to those who have access to it. Just a little movement in the body. Our breath is always something we can return to. Breathing exercises are phenomenal. Oh, I'm so grateful for them. But just all these different things that we have available to us and may not know. And I really did not intend for that to be the fullness of today's episode, but it's what was alive within me right now, apparently. And it's speaking to all the ways in which we are being given. In this poem, we mentioned that we are all receiving from life. We are all receivers, and it feels good to receive. So maybe the takeaway is it is good to be open. It is good to remember that we are receiving all that we have from life and to speak our blessing into the universe, that we are open to all of our blessings. I am open to all of my blessings. I am open to the blessing that is you listening to this. And maybe even the blessing that is you liking this in this very different format than the previous episodes. I am also open to this unstructuredness today. We got through a third of the poem. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for you being here. Thank you for being a part of the Inner Bloom community today, gracing us, gracing me with your time and presence. I hope you stay around long enough to grow some roots here, or even better, to bloom. If you enjoyed today's exploration, or maybe want to check out some of the other ones for the other slightly different format, and received some love, light, or joy from this experience or from those, feel free to share them with a loved one and help this flower to bloom another beautiful petal. I would love to hear your reflections and thoughts over what we've explored. Feel free to share those with us in any modality that you see. Feel free to hit us up on our social medias, all of them at Inner Bloom Pod. That's INNER Bloom POD. Especially our Instagram. For the first 100 followers, I'm offering free tarot readings. We're almost there. We're almost at 100. That feels great, but there's still a few spots left. So go hit us up over there. Maybe we can work something out if you don't make it in the 100 first. If you'd like to carry the energy of this golden flower with you, I've designed some pretty solid merch, I would say, for you at shop.innerbloompod.com. So feel free to check that out. And if you'd like more spoken content, I'm working on some exclusive meditations for our Patreon and Coffee. I'm also recording a full audiobook of the Prophet so that you can be inspired and empowered by its words from beginning to end. And I can pour that good energy into each word that I speak for you and for your experience. And you can enjoy that from beginning to end. And speaking of end, I think we've brought ourselves to the end of our exploration here today. We'll be back on Thursday with guided affirmations over the themes explored today, and on Tuesday again for our next poetic exploration. I guess we'll be exploring even more of this poem, which is exciting. I mean, there's much to give and much to receive, so thank you for being on both sides of that, receiving these words and giving me the opportunity to share with you. Until then, I'll be manifesting all of the love and light into your life and looking forward to hearing from you. Until the next time, may you be blessed in all of your ways and all of your days. Thank you.